Hello everyone, welcome to another day where in the UK yet another one of our institutions falls to leftist infiltration. This news came out yesterday about Eton College, the most prestigious college in the United Kingdom where pretty much every Conservative Prime Minister goes to. Eton heading for a regime of indoctrination, warns Master. Oh my. An Eton Master has claimed that staff members with unorthodox views feared that they could be next in the firing line after an English teacher was sacked over a video on patriarchy. Now, I've linked the video in question in the description, and it's called The Patriarchy Paradox by Nolan Knows. And I would suggest that you go watch it. It's very Peterson-esque, so I imagine if you enjoy the content on my channel, you will very much enjoy the content Nolan Knows has for this particular video. And it is very Jordan Peterson-esque, as I said. It brings up all the similar arguments and to the same conclusion that patriarchy essentially doesn't exist. Or if it does, there are a lot of unanswered questions from people who push the idea. But I will get back to the article. Luke Martin, who preaches in chapel, wrote to Dr. Andrew Gailey, the school's vice provost, claiming that it was coming close to indoctrinating pupils with a progressive worldview akin to religious fundamentalism, and he should know he is the school preacher. He urged the Eton College leadership to reinstate Will Noland, who was sacked after he refused to remove a video from his YouTube channel which argues that patriarchy is grounded in biology. Well, that's true. The dismissal has prompted criticism of Simon Henderson, the headmaster, who has been accused of trying to suppress free speech. Now, we will go into a bit of detail on the headmaster, Simon Henderson, later, but I don't want to spoil anything now. Eton said that it had asked Mr. Noland to remove the video after receiving legal advice indicating that it could be in breach of equalities legislation and education regulations. He refused repeatedly and was dismissed. Amazing how something so Peterson-esque can be seen as illegal in this country and even against education regulations. I mean, honestly, the whole video is just purely educational. It is nothing but fact and arguments derived from said facts. And yet apparently that is both illegal and against education regulations. What the hell is going on? And this is all while people are supporting Black Lives Matter and having a black curriculum and saying that black history is British history or whatever way around they say it. It's ridiculous. Like, pure indoctrination is totally fine, but no. You have a well-reasoned argument on your YouTube channel which is completely separate to your teaching, and you have to go apparently. Mr. Noland, a member of the Free Speech Union, had wanted to discuss the lecture as part of the school's Perspectives course. Good. I'm glad that he's part of the Free Speech Union. They are doing work to protect people's speech. Dr. Martin, who recently resigned as Master of Perspectives, said that working as a teacher at Eton had been his dream job. But the sacking had cast a pall over staff quarters. The effect on the common room is disheartening, he said. The question for some of us is, if Mr. Noland was disciplined for expressing unorthodox views, might I be next? The teacher said that he had become aware of a worrying trend. He continued, there is a growing proportion of a so-called progressive ideology that claims to be inclusive, tolerant and kind. What has dawned on me over the last few years is that it is remarkably similar to the forms of religious fundamentalism that I'm familiar with. If you disagree with it, you're excluded. I've become increasingly concerned that some schools, including Eton, are moving towards a point where it will be accurate to say that they are trying to indoctrinate their students. And he is absolutely right. There has just been open indoctrination in schools for years in Britain. I keep saying I'm going to do a stream on it, and I promise I will soon, but even looking at BBC Bitesize, there's loads of just clear indoctrination. In fact, I went over some of it in the last video, talking about Black Lives Matter changing the curriculum, and there's loads of stuff in there saying that, Enoch Powell was a racist, diversity was implied to be a very good thing for Britain. Just having all these one-sided talks about immigration, and then they even implied that if you're against immigration, you're a massive racist. It's just... And this is on a mainstream website to help kids revise. Backed by the government, by the way. And also apparently there's legislation to say that the video made by Mr. Noland is apparently against the Equalities Act. I mean, honestly, if there's one bit of legislation that needs to go, that is it. If going against the idea of patriarchy in a YouTube video is breaking legislation, I can't think of anything else you need to get rid of first. Anyway, back to the article. Dr. Martin said that Mr. Noland, whose YouTube channel is called Nolan Knows, had offered a perspective on masculinity in the video. I don't agree with all the views expressed, but then why should I? The point of perspectives is that boys are exposed to various perspectives, some of which they will disagree with. Martin van Creveld, an Israeli historian, wrote in support of Mr. Noland after he heard that the teacher quoted lines from his book in the lecture. He wrote, "Welcome to classical Athens, where Socrates was made to drink poison for corrupting the youth. The Times reported yesterday that a pupil who wrote to Mr. Henderson demanding his resignation was sent home for a short break." Bloody hell, it was one of the pupils who was being a cuck and trying to get his teacher taken out of the school because he didn't like a YouTube video. I mean, this is the point we're at. Pupils are telling on their teachers. A spokeswoman for Eton said, once again, there are attempts to conduct or influence the college's disciplinary process in public rather than via the proper procedures. This letter has been received by the Vice Provost. As he will chair the appeal hearing, it is not appropriate for us to comment further. And that's the end of the Times article. So there you have it. William Noland has been fired from his job for basically putting out his perspective, and maybe not even his perspective, but an argument against the feminist dogma of patriarchy. And due to this crime against feminism, he has been kicked out of his job, and it's even been advised by lawyers that it's against the law to have such perspectives even put out on the web, meaning that apparently I've broken the equalities legislation many times over. The things I do for rebellion. But as I said before, the headmaster, Mr. Henderson, he's actually part of the reason it's gone so leftist. So, from The Guardian 5 years ago, new Eton head to put emphasis on pupils' emotional intelligence. School's youngest headmaster signals change in tone and will take a holistic approach to focus on happiness and mental health rather than elitism. I don't know who on the board of directors of Eton thought that was a good idea, but this is essentially trying to feminise an entire boys' school, and guess what? That's not an ideal thing. The new headmaster of Eton College wants to develop emotional intelligence in his pupils and provide them with a holistic, rounded education. Simon Henderson, who took over the hardship of the top public school at the beginning of this term, is attempting to signal a change of tone at Eton. A byword for privilege, power, and considerable wealth. Yeah, again, that's fine. The only people that have a problem with that are the socialists. And I think we should fuck off with socialists when it comes to running countries and, other places, businesses, schools, whatever. Because they get everything wrong apart from how to take these places over, as you can see. The whole point of school is to prepare young people for happiness and success in their personal lives and working lives, Henderson told The Guardian. Is it to prepare young people for happiness? No, it's there to help kids learn for their futures, which will both be for personal and working lives, I suppose, but mainly focusing on working. People will deal with their personal lives however the hell they want. There is more awareness of emotional intelligence and of mental health, of young people building confidence and resilience to manage themselves in a fast-changing, challenging environment, he said. See, this is the thing that I absolutely hate about schools now. They're all focusing on this emotional intelligence and mental health. And it never seemed to be a problem before. Schools just used to teach people, objective subjects in English and maths and science and things like that. And drama in some cases. Never had this focus on emotional intelligence and mental health and trying to stop depression. And for some reason now, I remember being at uni, it seemed like about 1 in 2 people had a mental health issue. And as far as I'm aware, that was never a pandemic like it is now. It's absolutely mental. So, for some reason, I think focusing on it seems to make it worse, ironically. The move is the latest attempt by private schools to reduce some of the stresses pupils can find themselves in highly competitive environments. Cheltenham Ladies College announced in the summer that they were bringing in meditation and curbing homework demands. Okay. Henderson said that while excellent academic standards were important, he wanted Eton College, which has educated 19 British Prime Ministers, including the present incumbent, as well as countless members of the establishment over generations, to be innovative, forward-thinking, outward-looking and open. Well, outward-looking, forward-thinking, innovative, open. So what do? They kick out someone who follows all 4 of those things? They just kick him out, so they try and move away from that apparently 5 years later. Yeah, well done, Mr. Henderson. The Guardian go into a little biography about him, but it's not particularly interesting. I'm more interested in seeing what he says. So, Henderson acknowledges that the vast majority of pupils will leave Eton with outstanding results and go on to universities such as Oxford, Cambridge, and further afield in the US. What's more important to him, he says, are the values we leave with them. He wants them to be confident without being arrogant, to have integrity, moral courage, resilience, and perseverance to overcome obstacles so as to make a really positive contribution to wider society. Well, that's pretty much everyone I know from Eton, including every Prime Minister we've had from there, and Richard Brain, who was the leader of UKIP before it went to shit. It's a long way from the perceptions held by many of Eton, not helped by recent accounts of hedonistic behaviour by wealthy old Etonians who party at Oxford in clubs such as the Bullingdon and the Piers Gaveston, then go on to dominate British political life. Yeah, but they tend to do a decent job of it unless you're Boris Johnson. Henderson accepts that the school is a political football, particularly at the moment as the Prime Minister is from Eton. I understand that people have a particular perceptions of Eton, he says. They are entitled to their opinion. There's no point us being defensive about it. The responsibility sits with me and Eton as an institution to try and show people what I regard as the real Eton. Ultimately, it's a school, he says. It's a school full of teenage boys, and teenage boys are teenage boys. So it's just a nothing burger at the end, but this is the thing. He's trying to change the face of Eton. He's trying to get over the fact that Eton is seen as a place for posh boys who can't relate to the real world, which honestly I don't think is actually the case. And yet he's gone so far to change the way Eton is seen that he has kicked someone out for questioning the feminist dogma. It's just gone too far, and I can see Eton not being the prestigious college that it has always been seen as in the next few years. But honestly, that speaks volumes as to the way education goes in England in general. It's been going downhill for ages, and we are in no sight of improving this problem. And if our elites can't even get over this type of crap, what chance do we have? And just to drill my point home that Eton has been turning full leftist for a while, this is just the big bit of news that's really shown it outwardly. Here's a small article from The Telegraph. Eton may not have been publicly woke, but it's been culturally left-wing for some time. The 2020s establishment is woke, and in following suit, Eton is just doing what it has always done, being part of it. So this article actually came out just before the news of Nolan's firing, which I find fascinating, so let's get into it. I left Eton in 2012, just before media coverage of terms like white privilege, unconscious bias and critical race theory began to surge. The school in 2020 has been very much aligned with the Great Awakening, moving to decolonise its curriculum, while the headmaster, Simon Henderson, issued a Tony Blair-type apology for claims of racism experienced by a black student in the 1960s. Simon Henderson actually unironically apologised for racism that was held over half a century ago. This is the type of person in charge of Eton now. Mr. Henderson does not have an easy PR job. He'd like people to know Eton is rightening past wrongs and making white pupils aware of their privilege. But there are many among those he wants to please who will never forgive the school for being the place where the heirs of the rich and powerful are taught. Exactly, so just sod socialists. Simultaneously, conservatives get angry when they see a historic fixture take a sudden turn to the left. Why alter a successful formula? Well, that's exactly my question that I'm afraid won't get answered. My GCSE history beak stirred up the rest of my class against me for saying Israel had the moral high ground over Hamas, and there was a pretty uncharitable general view taken of the United States. It was not productive to be openly non-liberal. Well, imagine my shock. I've at least always liked discussing politics. My brother had other interests, yet was habitually called Daily Mail, our father's then workplace, by his Spanish teacher. The nicknames were two-way. Another member of that department was known by many boys as Mrs. Bolshevik. What happened at Eton is an example of O'Sullivan's Law. All establishments that aren't explicitly right-wing will become left-wing over time. Can you think of a single major institution that's moved to the right in the modern era? Exactly. It's ridiculous that we're allowing this. There is no and I mean not a single institution that has not been explicitly right-wing that hasn't turned left. And even some of the right-wing ones have turned left. The Institute of Economic Affairs, I guess, would be my example. That is openly right-wing and economically free market. And yet, what do we see? They are very much for mass immigration from their writings. Though they are incredibly good at arguing against the left wing on many economic and fiscal grounds, when it comes to anything cultural, they are just awful at it. And even The Spectator, as I went through just before the US election, that's been moving left wing. Most of their American writers voted for Joe Biden, despite all of their articles basically saying that he'd probably ruin the country with his policies. But Orange Man bad, am I right? The 2020s establishment is woke, and in following suit, Eton is just doing what it has always done, being part of it. By all means, have liberal teachers, but make them keep their views as private as their conservative colleagues, and there must be some left, tend to, or have to, do. Well, I agree. If you can't make a video on why the idea of patriarchy isn't a good idea, and that the feminist theory behind it is just completely wrong, you should not be able to make a video promoting it either. But from the looks of it, I don't think anyone from Eton has actually done that. What must be exposed is the cynical life lesson Eton's progressive shift is affirming, that the easiest and least stressful path to success is to adopt the status quo viewpoint without question. I mean, this just screams what people like Academic Agent and myself have been saying for ages. These leftists will infiltrate everything, and once they're infiltrated, they will poke around with a bayonet in that institution for mush. When they find mush, they'll keep pushing on that particular direction. And apparently the way in for Eton for this leftism was feminism. Because it's an all-boys school, apparently they have to be guilty about that. They have to be guilty for teaching the most privileged and rich in the UK and from around the world. And that's another area that socialists have actually found. So they're making a commitment to help out the least fortunate in society, which I'm not actually against, to be fair. But despite how much they do for them, it's still not enough for these socialist, postmodern twats. So my answer would be don't do anything for them. But not even Eton can stand up to this stuff. Eton, the home of many, many, many Conservative MPs, and a lot more of the quote-unquote right-wing establishment, who most of which are now, as he said, all those institutions are turning left-wing. And it's absolutely ruining the country, and it leaves those of us who are conservative with nowhere left to go. I mean, I'm still classically liberal, but bloody hell, I do have some conservative leanings, and I don't know where I'm supposed to go to have them informed and have them enforced. I wouldn't be surprised if Eton come out with a massive rainbow flag draped over their college, especially if they're apologising for things that happened in the 1960s. But this is how far we've fallen. Our conservative elites are no longer against the left wing, and Eton has gone fully leftist. What are we to do now? I do not know. But this is the type of stuff I've been fighting for years. It's not going to stop me. And honestly, I hope that kid that got Mr. Noland fired gets bullied out of Eton, because there is nothing that makes character stronger than bullying. I'm only half joking there. YouTube, I do not condone bullying. I disavow myself. But anyway, that's everything I had for you today. Sorry to be so blackpilling. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.